Thank you for that, Billy, and thank you, Sherry, for the introduction. Richard, appreciate, obviously, the opportunity to be here to speak. Good morning, everyone. I am very excited to be here, and what Billy just laid out was probably overkill. I'm not that fancy, nor probably that deserving of what he said, but we appreciate Billy's service. We appreciate working with the Arc of Tennessee, and really want to thank each one of you for what you do to advocate for children every single day, because we need good partners. We want good partners. And as I kind of talked about on Monday night, I want to make sure that we just talk a little bit about what we do and why it's important and why we need you to continue to be engaged with us, because we're looking for folks that believe in the opportunities that are presented to children, but specifically children that sometimes are unseen and unheard. What are we doing to make sure that we're meeting the needs of those children too? And I know Richard told me we've got folks online at home or wherever they are. Thank you for joining as well. Carly Carlton is here. Carly is our PIO, Public Information Officer with our department. I want to get this out before, because I told her I didn't want to forget about it. Carly has my business cards. If there's anything that you need after I speak, or anything that I might be able to do to help you in your role, or our departments can help with children, please make sure to see Carly. She's down here in front. She's got business cards because we do want to do that. So I'm going to jump right into it, because I'm really excited about what we do, and kind of tell you a little bit about my story and why it's important and why it matters with what you're doing and how they're connected there. So as Billy mentioned and as Sherry mentioned in my bio, I've got a daughter, Kinsley, who was part of the Tennessee Early Intervention System program. Kinsley has intellectual developmental disabilities. She had a massive stroke before she was born, about 2 weeks before she was born, and then several smaller strokes. So as a result of that, she's in a wheelchair, she's nonverbal, she has right side neglect on her body, she has cerebral palsy, but she is the reason that I wake up every day in this job. It is a huge blessing for me to be able to serve our community in not only a role as a commissioner, but always wearing my father cap, and being Kinsley's dad allows me to really empathize. And I think if anything we've seen over these last several years, we need a little bit more empathy between us, how we talk about politics, how we talk about policy, how we talk about engaging our communities. And that's something that it's allowed me to be able to do when I talk to parents, when I talk to stakeholders, when we talk to advocacy groups, we talk to groups that are involved in children and youth. I can understand that a little bit better as a parent of a child with disabilities. And so that has certainly been something that I've tried to bring with me to work every day. But the Tennessee Early Intervention System has been incredibly successful. Historically, it was housed inside the Tennessee Department of Education. 2 years ago, I worked with Commissioner Penny Schwinn to move that over into our department, to really create a natural network for Tennesseans with disabilities to understand that there's services available inside our department that can help them. So how many of you know someone by chance that was involved in early intervention? Maybe your own child. There's a couple people that have raised their hands, probably half the room at least. We really want to make sure the other half gets the chance to say at some point that they know a family that has benefited from early intervention. The program is growing exponentially. And it's growing exponentially, I think, because people are talking about the value that they're seeing from the program, the value that they're seeing their child has received from that program. And that's really important, because word of mouth is a huge part of that. One of the really unique benefits I think is important for this group to maybe take home and be able to share in your specific and respected communities is anyone can make a referral for a child to have an evaluation inside early intervention. It does not have to come from a doctor. Doesn't have to come from a medical professional. It can come from a teacher. It can come from a nurse. It can come from a neighbor. It can come from someone at church. Anyone in that circle can refer the child to TEIS for a consultation and for an early intervention if they meet the criteria for developmental delays. That has been incredibly important messaging for us to get out all across the state of Tennessee, because everyone, if I asked you to, probably by a man or woman in this room, knows someone with a disability or is familiar with a child that might have developmental delays that would benefit from TEIS if they're not in that program right now. The program as it's structured right now begins as early as birth all the way up to 3 years old. There's a budget proposal right now that we have in front of the legislature that would extend the service delivery system to 4 years old for children, which would be incredibly important given the challenges that we've seen statewide with the COVID pandemic in education, children not being in schools, which impacts therapies not being delivered at homes. A lot of challenges that the pandemic created. We felt it was something necessary that we wanted to try to work with the governor's office, the legislature, to see if we can create an opportunity for early intervention to be extended for a year, which would then make it permanent and reach more and more children all across the state of Tennessee. one of the things that I firmly believe, and I talk about this when we travel the state and we work with parents, we work with organizations, we work with different groups across the state. If you don't get to children and get them help now, you're going to pay for it tenfold down the road. If you don't help them as young as you can get them, you're going to feel that when they're 21, they're 31, they're 41, they're 51. What we want to do is create such a solid foundation for the child that whatever that looks like for their future, we're going to make it the best that they can be. When I was in my budget hearing the other day, one of the legislators asked me, well, what does success look like? Like, how do we know these programs are working? I kind of broke it down in very personal terms, but also very, terms I think that are appropriate that everyone in here can understand and relate to as well. My daughter can say 6 words, roughly 6 words. Her vocabulary is about half a dozen to a dozen words, but 2 of those are mom and dad. Well, that's success to me. When you see someone who's overcome addiction, a child that became addicted to drugs at 13, and then they've overcome the addiction and they're working a job at 18 or 19. Whether or not they went to college or not, that child has created a successful platform for themselves because they've reached something that the world told them you're never going to amount to anything. So we've got to do better in figuring out how do we really define success, because success doesn't mean that you've got multiple college degrees. It's great if you do. I don't want to upset anybody in here if you've got it. But we've got to create different lenses to look through when we define what success actually looks like. TEIS is a great program that creates that opportunity for children to immediately have a stronger foundation when they move into the education system, that we have created, hopefully, success for them, success for their family, success for their community, and then down the road, lessen their dependency on services so we can provide services to those who may not have had it early on, or those that might have more medically complex challenges or really need some services that the state of Tennessee provides. Let me wrap up this portion by saying this. We're missing children that desperately need this service. And this is my heartfelt appeal to the folks online, heartfelt appeal to those in the room, to Richard and his team, anybody that's in here. We need to be able to find more children that can benefit from these services. The average age right now in some of our districts for children before they're even referred is about 20 months. That's already halfway through their eligibility, and then they're gone, and we don't have a chance to get back to them. We're missing so much of an opportunity, just even on, I know that you just mentioned that you've done anatomy and that your conversation, how you've taught. A child's brain, when they're developing at an early age like that, is critical for their overall development as a person when they become an adult. If we don't get to them when they're that age, it becomes a lot harder when they get into school to be able to see the needs that they might have and work to create a better environment for that student to be able to learn and to grow on their own. We need you to help advocate for the TEIS program. It's on our website. We've got success stories. Just in the last 4 years, the TEIS program has grown 30%. I think last year, Carly might know, last year we were north of 12 or 15,000 children that we met, that we did consultations with. Not all of them were eligible for the program, but we met a lot of children that we know needed. And I think one of the things that's important to remember about this, again, is any child is eligible. Any child that is in rural Tennessee that might not be connected to a family member, that might have a guardian, they're eligible. We work very closely with the Department of Children's Services in TEIS programs for children that are in our foster care system. We work very closely with the immigrant community for families that might have needs that do not have English as their primary language spoken in their home. We're working to make sure that we provide capabilities and possibilities for those children too. So there really is a big opportunity for us here to do better, and that's certainly what we want to do. The second program that I want to bring your attention to that kind of springboards into, is a springboard from TEIS into this program, is a Katie Beckett waiver. You might have heard me talk about it a little bit on Monday. The Katie Beckett waiver is a really new program in the state of Tennessee, only been around about a year and a half, that allows us to have families that have medically complex children, might have different needs that traditional insurance might not be able to pay for, therapies that may not be able to pay for. It allows parents the flexibility to be able to get services for their child that historically they might not have been able to do. The reason that I'm saying it's a springboard is a lot of the families that are obviously inside TEIS, we want to introduce them to the Katie Beckett waiver so they can apply for that, be deemed eligible, and then be able to decide whether they fit into Part A or Part B and give them the opportunity to choose that. Part A is really for medically complex, very medically fragile children. You're talking about, full-time nursing, a lot of really intensive services delivered to those families. And then part B is the one that we've seen a lot of families like the flexibility that comes from that. It allows them to do respite, allows them to do home modifications, allows them to do some different therapies for their children that traditionally they might not have been able to do because insurance doesn't pay for it. But it's a program that's actually changing the lives of Tennesseans. I can't tell you on a personal level how many emails that I've gotten, how many face-to-face meetings I've had that they have said the Katie Beckett program, families have told us, have saved their marriage. They've saved the family from the individual, the parent, if it's a single mom, a single dad, even a mom and dad in the homes, a grandparent, an aunt and uncle, whatever, saved them from bouts of depression that they were experiencing because they couldn't deliver services for their loved one. To say it's changed lives is not hyperbole, folks. It is very real. Very proud of what we've done with TennCare. TennCare has been an excellent partner with us in making sure that we're able to deliver those services. But again, that's another program that we want folks inside the children and youth communities to help advocate for, because a lot of the families don't even know that they're out there for children with disabilities. Really unique stat, I think, that kind of speaks to where we are, not just as a country, but specifically as a state. Roughly 1 in 6 Tennesseans has a disability. It can be high-functioning autism, it can be hearing impairment, it can be visual impairments. We all know someone that's got a disability, but we don't know where to send folks that might have disabilities to get help. We just know that they're there, we see them, they're in our communities, that we might be one of them. We're working, we're seeing more and more folks that make the decision to share their disability, their identification as an individual with a disability. We want to make sure that we're meeting those needs for those individuals, because historically it's been very challenging. I don't think I shared this with you, but I want to, kind of paint the picture for you about why it's important where we are, about why I'm really proud, and Billy kind of talked about it, what my vision looks like, how we're wanting to continue to make changes in Tennessee. And believe it or not, it's interesting. You mentioned about a lot of stuff you're working on in Johnson City. This is something that's bipartisan. Our work's the same thing. We have never had a diehard Republican or diehard Democrat come to us with anything that's partisan related. It's always about how do we help, because people see that need. And I think that's really something that's bringing people together in our community, is everybody wants to help. Sometimes we just have a little bit of a different opinion on what does that help look like. So what we're able to do is present these real stories. Less than 10 years ago, Tennessee had state-run institutions for Tennesseans with disabilities. There are stories, there are families that would take their children there, drop them off at the steps and leave them and never come back and visit them, and the children would live there for 40 years. Individuals were bathed by being placed on conveyor belts and hosed down as they were going up and down a conveyor belt. This was less than 15 years ago. So we are not that far removed from our population feeling like not only were they were not seen, there was a dignity issue there. They were never given opportunities for employment. They were never considered about how can we incorporate this population in our community to promote independence. Those are the streams that we're still swimming against, because a lot of those mindsets still exist when we're working with the Katie Beckett waiver about what parents see, what might happen to their child down the road. What we're wanting to do is create a whole different lens for them to see through, to say, it's not what your child might do down the road, it's what they will do down the road, and what we're going to do to try to help you create an environment for your child to be the most successful that they can be. And I'm really excited about it, because we're already hearing those stories that parents are seeing hope again for their children or for what their future might look like, when in the past they would have never had that. 2 other programs, just very briefly, that I want to talk about that I think are just equally as important in this, that I'm really excited about. The Family Support Program that we have is a program that's been around for years in the state of Tennessee, that gives families an opportunity to be able to submit an application for funds that would go to them to be able to meet the needs of their child. That is statewide. That's all state dollars. The governor's office, the legislature have committed dollars to be able to serve Tennesseans with family support money. That's an important program that I think you need to be able to remember to take back to your community, because it's helping families, thousands of families all across the state, and it's producing the results that we want to see for children and youth that might have disabilities and for their families. The last program that's really new that I think kind of puts a bow on all of what we're wanting to do, that I think is important, that a lot of folks in here probably don't know about, but you need to know about it because it's going to impact you, and I'm going to tell you why. Is last year, the governor's office and the state legislature approved funding for a program called Tennessee Believes. What Tennessee Believes is, it's a program that allows four-year universities, TCATs this year, community colleges to create programs or help supplement programs that they already have for Tennesseans with disabilities that want to go to community college, want to go to TCAT, want to go get a 4-year degree, and then work with those individuals to be able to create opportunities for employment and independence that can be created by something like a college degree. We're working very closely with the Tennessee Higher Education Commission, with Dr. House and her team, on developing certification programs that employment individuals and businesses would recognize as the same as a 4-year degree. They wouldn't just look for a 4-year degree. They would understand if there's someone with a disability that's approaching them that has this certificate, that would be recognized as the equivalent of what a 4-year degree looks like, a 2-year degree, something from TCAT, whatever that may be. Really excited about what that's going to do, because I met a family in Johnson City, and I'll try to wrap up with this, that we met with them. They were in the Katie Beckett program, and the young man, 8 years old, in a wheelchair, I was having a conversation with them, and I said, well, what do you want to do when you grow up? And I said, do you want to go to college, or what do you want to do? And he said, I'll never be able to go to college because I'm in a wheelchair. That is fundamentally and morally wrong for a child at 8 years old to think that their future is already set in concrete, that they can't be something. And that really stuck with me when we kept advocating around the Katie Beckett program, the Tennessee Believes program, that's one child. There's probably thousands of children that are being told by somebody else, you can't do that because of your disability. I'll wrap up by saying this. This is important for me. Diversity is having a seat at the table. Inclusion is having a voice, but belonging is actually having that voice heard. What you're doing is giving a voice to allow us to hear those voices be heard for the first time in their lives. What we're trying to do as a department is to work with you, work with others to make sure that those voices don't fade into the wilderness, that we're continuing to advocate for them. So I will stop there for a second. I know we're pushing, got a lot of people that want to speak. Again, Carly Carlson's here. She has my business card. If you've got any questions, follow-ups, Sherry and I were having a conversation. Richard, I don't know if you want me to take questions or just defer to Carly. I'm happy to do any of it. Carly's got my business cards. Please reach out to us. Whatever we can do to help you, we're here to do that. We want to advocate. We want to be good partners. Thank you for what you're doing, and we certainly look forward to working with you in the future. Thank you. Thank you.